So, what is Stoicism? Stoicism is the predominantly a philosophy of personal ethics which is informed by its system of logic and its views on the natural world. So, how we can connect with Stoicism to the happiness? Here's why. So, can true happiness be achieved? In society today, there's a common understanding that true happiness can never be achieved. Moreover, the purpose of life is to suffer and to work until death. This do raise many questions about the step to take in order to achieve happiness. The struggle to answer these questions goes above and beyond the mind, because humans are made so distinctively that definitions vary from a person to person. But if true happiness is in fact achievable, it will be attained only by we want with ourselves, with what we produce, and with the people that surround us. Stoicism was established approximately 300 BCE by a Greek philosopher and mathematician, Zeno, and included philosophers such as Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. The Stoic school of philosophy taught the soul and how to become enriched with inner peace. The Stoics, and specifically Epictetus, believe only attempting to control what is personally controllable while accepting the fate to the controller of what was personally uncontrollable could bring the peace and soul and mind. Further, belief include that what happened did so for a reason and the control of one's fate belong to God. Stoic theory on people's natures additionally include the struggle of the good versus evil and how to relate to human interaction. Stoics conclude that nothing that happens can be wrong or bad, since everything that happens is a part of the God's rational plan. Therefore, it cannot be said the person is evil based on his or her actions, since, according to a Stoic philosophy, a person's actions are uncontrollable, but instead fate, and being they are fate by the God, they cannot be evil. It's accepting of this evil as being a fate that would bring one closer to inner peace. This Stoic teaching can be understood as the first step in a search of the true happiness. Continuing the search for the true happiness, philosopher Karl Marx support the idea of becoming one of ourselves and the product thereof. Due to the multiple possible interpretation of Marx, his philosophy can be confusing to some. To understand how this relate to the finding of true happiness is the simple understanding alienations. Alienation is the term used by Marx to explain how persons can become separate from their souls and hearts. The term alienations it describes a state of powerlessness, frustration, repress, resentment, and despair. In other words, to take the second step toward the true happiness is necessary to become a reverse unalienation. The term unalienation can describe as becoming one with yourself and the things we created. It's a fact that most humans cannot be truly happy. In fact, the search for the true happiness is a never-ending struggle. Therefore, taking a look into why we can't find happiness can perhaps be explained by the reason of why we suffer. The human nature is a cycle where there is a birth, growth, and death, but in between all of it, there is a more suffering than happiness. Take the following philosopher for example. Buddha, a witch prince, that while a shield from all is a bad, was able to find a true meaning in a life only when he found the pain and suffering. Socrates, well-known as a philosopher that was loved by many, was punished by the death by a poisoning after being found guilty and perverting the minds of the young and refusing the knowledge of the gods recognized by the states, and introducing a strange divinity of his own. The king Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire and the Stoic philosopher, battled with many resulting in much pain and suffering. Finally, Epictetus, a slave that suffered through his life, was well known through his teaching of the Stoicism. Epictetus taught that accepting of punishment and suffering was the course of nature, and the fact that we live to suffer is indisputable. But how can this bring us closer to happiness? It's only through the understanding that life will always take a course and that suffering has the way of forcing itself to living, that one can find acceptance to the fate and induce happiness. In summary, there's a common belief that true happiness can never be achieved, that we were meant to suffer until death, but beliefs can send us into a never-ending spiral, which can only be described as a repetitive cycle of a birth, growth, and death. It's necessary to understand the course of nature and the cycle of life and why they are unstoppable. Birth, growth, and death are part of the cycle of any human life, and we can become one with ourselves. With what we do and create, it's also important to understand that suffering will always be an essential part of the human soul. But if true happiness is achievable, it would be when we are the one with ourselves, what we produce, and what we acceptance that suffering is essential part of the true happiness.
I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful